The grand crystal hall of the Neran Empire gleamed under the light of 1,000 suspended stones, each glowing softly. The air shimmered with the energy of old feuds and new hope. Delegates from every known world filled the wide chamber, and their voices created a gentle, nervous hum. Above all, on a raised dais, sat the alien royal family. At the center, Princess Alira. Alira was only 19 years old, but she held herself as if she were centuries older. Her blue-green skin caught the crystal lights, and her silver eyes missed nothing. She was tall, slender, and beautiful in the way rare flowers are beautiful, proud, delicate, and somehow distant. Around her, the Neran nobles sat, each more decorated than the last. They all looked toward the center of the hall where the humans had been given a space. Earth's delegation looked out of place in this shining room. Most of them wore simple uniforms, pale next to the swirling robes and bright sashes of the aliens. At their front stood Lieutenant Marcus Hale, chosen to speak for humanity at these peace talks. He was just a soldier, not a politician, but he'd been in the war since its earliest days. Scars crossed his face and arms, and his armor, dented, scratched, but well cared for, was the only fancy thing he owned. Alira saw Marcus as soon as he entered. She watched the way he moved, careful, alert, as if every step mattered. She saw his armor, his scars, the quiet in his eyes. To her, he was just another human soldier. Famous, maybe, for some battle in a far-off system, but nothing special. The Nerans had won more victories, had older, wiser leaders, and controlled more worlds. What could this young human know about true power? As the room settled, the master of ceremonies called for the first formal greeting. One by one, the delegations spoke. The Zillions, with their many wings, offered flowery words. The Marindi, half machine, recited facts and numbers. At last, it was the humans' turn. Marcus stepped forward, and the room fell almost silent. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried. "We come for peace," Marcus said, "because we've all lost too much in this war." His words were simple, honest, and without grand promises. The Nerans, including Alira, found his speech underwhelming. She whispered to the noble beside her, "He sounds afraid, or maybe just simple. Humans think their pain is special." Her words were sharp enough that several nearby nobles chuckled. Marcus heard nothing, but the small group of humans at his back shifted uncomfortably. They'd all felt the cold stares, the hidden laughter since arriving. The ceremony continued. Every few moments, Alira made another quiet remark about the humans' clunky armor, their soft faces, their childlike hope for peace. Each joke made the alien nobles laugh a little louder. Some even sneered openly at Marcus and his companions. At last, the time came for the symbolic exchange, a tradition meant to show goodwill. Alira was chosen to offer the Neran gift, a sparkling blade made from the core of a dead star. She walked to the center of the hall, tall and elegant, holding the blade with both hands. She faced Marcus and smiled, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. "This is a weapon forged from worlds you'll never see," Alira announced, loud enough for all to hear. "It is as rare as human courage and as sharp as human memory." The nobles burst into laughter, some pounding their fists on the table. The humans looked down, embarrassed, unsure how to respond. Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the room. He knew what Alira was doing, testing him, mocking him. He could feel anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Instead, he took a slow breath, stepped forward, and accepted the blade without a word. The hall went quiet, waiting for him to respond with anger or with some weak joke. But Marcus did not speak. Instead, he did something no one expected. With steady hands, Marcus reached for the clasps of his own armor. Piece by piece, he undid them, the chest plate, the arm guards, the leg plates, even the helmet. Each piece landed on the floor with a dull metallic sound. The aliens gasped, some covering their mouths. No human ever stood unprotected in the Neran court, not even for show. But Marcus kept going until all he wore was a thin, pale undersuit. Nothing fancy, nothing to hide behind. He looked directly at Alira. For a moment, it seemed like he might speak, but instead, Marcus bent down, placed the star-forged blade on the floor beside his armor, and turned his back on the royal dais. Without a single word, he walked away from the center of the hall, past the stunned nobles, through the open doors, and into the shadowed corridors of the palace. The entire hall fell silent. No one knew what to say. Some Nerans stared at the armor left behind. Others whispered to each other, confusion mixing with a strange respect. Alira's mouth hung open for a heartbeat, caught between laughter and shock. One of the older nobles broke the silence. "It seems the human has more courage than we thought," he muttered, but others only shook their heads, calling Marcus a coward, a fool, a child who could not handle a little teasing. Yet the story of what happened in the grand hall spread quickly through the palace. Servants and guards whispered about the human who removed his armor and walked away from the princess. Some laughed, but others wondered why he had done it. The act, so unexpected, unsettled even the oldest Neran warriors. Alira could not let it go. That evening in her private chambers, she replayed the scene over and over in her mind. She remembered. The look in Marcus's eyes, not angry, not hurt, but almost calm. She wondered what he meant to prove. Was it pride, or was it something deeper? For the first time, she felt a small flicker of doubt. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself alone in a quiet garden outside the palace. He sat on a low stone bench, looking up at the unfamiliar stars. The air smelled different here, sweeter, colder. He could still feel the weight of his armor on his shoulders, even though it was gone. He thought of the men and women he'd fought beside, some still alive, many lost to the war. He remembered the day he was chosen for this mission. "Keep your cool, Marcus," his old commander had told him. "You're not just a soldier now, you're the face of humanity." He wondered if he'd done the right thing. Would his people think he'd shown weakness or strength? He wasn't sure. All he knew was that he couldn't let the Nerans define him by his armor or his scars or the wars he'd fought. He needed them to see the real him, even if it meant risking their scorn. As the night grew deeper, a soft noise broke the silence. Marcus turned to see a small group of children, 2 Neran, 1 human refugee, creeping through the garden. One was limping, her leg in a makeshift brace. Marcus stood, offering his hand. "Do you need help?" he asked softly. The children looked up, surprised. They had seen the scene in the hall, heard the laughter, but here was the human soldier, unarmored, gentle and kind. They accepted his offer, and soon Marcus was busy tending to a scraped knee, using a simple first aid kit from his belt. From a high window, Alira watched the scene unfold. She saw Marcus kneel beside the children, speaking softly, helping without, asking who they were or where they came from. The flicker of doubt inside her grew. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this human than she had first believed. The palace of the Neran Empire was always busy, but after the scene in the Crystal Hall, everything felt different. Whispers traveled quickly through golden corridors and bright gardens. People spoke about the human soldier who had left his armor behind. Some called it an act of pride. Others said it was foolish. But for many, it sparked curiosity. Why would someone risk everything just to prove a point? Princess Alira tried to ignore the rumors at first. She had always believed humans were simple, emotional creatures who wore their pride like a shield. Yet, the memory of Marcus standing calmly as laughter echoed around him would not leave her mind. She remembered his steady gaze, how he had refused to answer her jokes with anger or embarrassment. Instead, he'd just removed his armor, placed it on the floor, and walked away. Alira spent her morning attending royal duties, meetings with advisors, discussions about the peace talks, listening to reports from distant planets. But her mind kept wandering back to Marcus. Why had he acted that way? Did he really believe humans didn't need armor, or was there something deeper she didn't understand? Finally, Alira decided she needed answers. She sent her guards away, put on a simple cloak, and slipped quietly from her private rooms. She moved through the less traveled paths of the palace, keeping her presence hidden. If anyone saw the princess sneaking around, there would be endless questions. But curiosity pushed her forward. She found Marcus where she least expected, in the palace garden, surrounded by children. He was kneeling on the grass, showing them how to make small wind chimes out of shells and twine. Some of the children were Niran, others were refugees, small, thin, wearing patched clothes. All were smiling. Marcus's face was gentle and open. There was no trace of the stern soldier who had stood in the grand hall. Alira watched from behind a tree, feeling a strange tightness in her chest. Marcus noticed her after a moment, but instead of bowing or standing up, he just nodded politely. "You can join us, princess," he said in a calm voice. The children looked up, eyes wide with surprise. No one expected royalty to join them in play. Feeling awkward, Alira stepped forward. "I just came to see what a human soldier does when—" "He has no armor," she said, trying to sound clever. The words fell flat in the soft morning air. Marcus smiled, not unkindly. "Sometimes the best thing a soldier can do is put down his armor," he said. "Out here it just scares the little ones." He handed a wind chime to one of the smallest girls, who giggled and hugged him. Alira knelt on the grass, her expensive cloak getting dirty. She watched as Marcus taught the children a simple song from Earth. She noticed that he didn't treat anyone differently, not the Niran, not the humans, not even her. He was patient with all, even when the little boy kept getting the notes wrong or when the shells broke in his large hands. For a long time, they just sat together. Alira listened to the gentle sound of laughter and wind chimes. She realized that Marcus's strength wasn't just physical. It came from how he made people feel safe, even without weapons or armor. She thought about her own upbringing, how she'd always been taught that power came from control, from never showing weakness. Finally, as the children ran off to play, Alira found her voice. "Why did you really take off your armor?" she asked, quietly so the others would not hear. Marcus was silent for a while. Then he answered, "I wanted everyone to see me. Not just the medal, not just the uniform. If we are ever going to have peace, we need to start by being honest about who we are." Alira considered this. She wondered if she would ever be brave, enough to show her true self without royal titles or fancy clothes. She didn't know how to respond, so instead, she challenged Marcus in another way. "If you are so sure that humans are equal to Nirans, prove it. Face me in a challenge," she said, half teasing. Marcus looked amused. "What sort of challenge?" Alira smiled, feeling some of her confidence return. "3 tests," she said, "one of strength, one of skill, and one of cleverness. If you win, I will publicly apologize for mocking you. If I win, you must wear your armor for the rest of your stay, and never question Niran ways again." Marcus nodded. "Deal." Word of the princess's challenge spread quickly. The palace buzzed with excitement. Nobles and servants alike gathered to watch. The first test was one of strength. Alira, tall and graceful, chose a traditional Niran test, lifting a heavy stone orb over her head. She managed it easily, her arms steady. Marcus struggled at first, his muscles straining, face red, but after a deep breath he managed to lift the orb. The crowd cheered for both, but Alira had finished faster. Next was a test of skill, a puzzle box from Niran history, famous for its complexity. Both sat cross-legged on the floor, hands working over the strange symbols. Marcus was patient, thinking aloud, asking questions, while Alira worked in silence, relying on memory. At first, it seemed like Alira would win, but Marcus surprised everyone by solving the puzzle with a simple trick he'd learned as a child. This time, the crowd clapped for the human. The last test was one of cleverness, a riddle contest. Alira, who loved riddles, went first. Marcus listened carefully, puzzling over her words before offering a solution. Then it was his turn. His riddle was simple but elegant, about seeing without eyes and traveling without moving. Alira guessed it after only a moment. They both laughed, enjoying the challenge. In the end, the contest was declared a tie. The nobles groaned in disappointment, but Alira felt something unexpected, a sense of fun, of friendship. She realized that Marcus had not tried to win by force or by tricks. He had simply tried his best, and in doing so, he'd brought out the best in her too. After the contest, Alira and Marcus walked together through the palace gardens. "You're different from what I expected," Alira admitted. "Most humans would have been angry or tried to prove themselves the strongest." Marcus shrugged. "There are many ways to show strength. Sometimes the hardest thing is to stand your ground without fighting." They reached a quiet corner of the garden, where the sound of the city faded away. Alira turned to Marcus, her eyes serious. "If we make peace, it won't be easy. There are many who still hate humans. Even in my own family." Marcus nodded. "There are those on Earth who don't trust the Nirans either. But someone has to start." A sudden shout broke the calm. 2 palace guards raced toward them. "Princess, you must come quickly. There's trouble at the council chamber." Alira and Marcus ran after the guards, leaving the peaceful garden behind. Inside the palace, chaos had erupted. A group of radicals, opposed to peace, had set off a small explosion. Smoke filled the air and people ran in all directions. Alira's heart pounded as she searched for her father, the king. Marcus, even without armor, moved calmly through the panic, guiding people to safety. When they finally found the king, he was shaken but unharmed. Alira hugged him tightly, relief flooding her. She turned to Marcus, grateful for his presence. For the first time, she saw him not as a rival, but as a friend, someone who would stand by her side no matter what. That night, as the palace recovered from the chaos, Alira visited Marcus in the guest quarters. She thanked him quietly, her pride forgotten for a moment. "You didn't have to stay," she said. Marcus smiled. "I'm not leaving until there's peace, or until you beat me in a fair contest." Alira laughed, her earlier doubts replaced by respect. "Then you'll be here a long time, human." The palace was still waking from the shock of the explosion. Windows rattled in their frames, and servants hurried through the halls, whispering rumors. In the bright morning, sunlight poured across the marble floors, as if trying to push away the memory of last night's chaos. Princess Alira stood by her window, watching the palace grounds below. Smoke still drifted from a burned section of the council wing, black against the pale stone. Alira's hands were tight at her sides. She felt both afraid and determined. She remembered the faces of the frightened people running through the halls, and how Marcus had guided them to safety with calm words and steady hands. He had not thought about himself. He had not run or hesitated. He had acted as if every life in the palace mattered to him, even the lives of those who had mocked or doubted him. A knock sounded at her door. It was her old teacher, Mistress Sale, who had taught her the history of the Niran Empire. "You must be careful, Princess," Sale warned. "Many are angry. They say the humans are to blame for the unrest." Alira shook her head. "It wasn't the humans. It was those who fear peace." Her words were soft, but her eyes were fierce. "I saw who helped us last night. It was Marcus, the human everyone laughed at." Mistress Sale's lips pressed together, but she said nothing. The old ways were slow to change. After breakfast, Alira found Marcus in the palace infirmary. The room was filled with wounded guests, burns, scrapes, and broken bones. Marcus moved from bed to bed, offering help where he could, fetching water, wrapping bandages, and telling quiet stories to children who would not sleep. Alira watched him work. Even the palace healers, who had looked at humans with suspicion, now nodded to him with respect. One healer whispered, "He works like he is one of us." Another said, "He is gentle, not like a soldier at all." Alira approached Marcus. He looked tired, with circles under his eyes, but he smiled when he saw her. "How are you, princess? Did you sleep?" Alira sat on the edge of a nearby bed, lowering her voice. "Thank you for helping my people last night. Some say you saved many lives." Marcus shrugged. Anyone would have done the same, but Alira could see the truth. Not everyone would have. She thought of her own actions, how she'd hesitated before running to help. Marcus had not hesitated, not for a second. Alira reached for his hand, her royal pride forgotten. "You've changed the way people see humans," she said. "Even my father is beginning to listen to you." Marcus's face softened. "I don't want thanks, Alira. I want peace. Real peace. Not just words spoken in the council." They sat in silence for a moment, both thinking of the difficult days ahead. Then Alira's eyes brightened. "There is something you can do. The Galactic Council is meeting again this afternoon. They will want to blame someone for the attack. My father asked if you would speak. Tell your side and speak for all the humans." Marcus was quiet, but he nodded. "If it will help, I'll do it." Word of Marcus's speech spread quickly through the palace and into the city. By afternoon, the grand hall was full. Delegates from every world took their seats. The Niran nobles sat tallest, but now their eyes were less cold, more curious. King Orion, Alira's father, began the meeting. "Yesterday, enemies of peace attacked this palace. We grieve for the hurt and the fear they caused, but we will not let hatred win." His gaze turned to Marcus. "Lieutenant Marcus Hale, please speak for Earth." Marcus stood in the center of the room. He wore no armor, only his simple Earth uniform. He did not look like a hero. His clothes were dusty, his hands rough, his hair untidy, but his voice was steady as he began to speak. "I came here for peace," Marcus said. "My world has lost so much in this war. We have lost friends, family, homes. But last night I saw something. Not just fear and pain, but hope. I saw Nirans helping humans. I saw old enemies working together to save children. That is what peace looks like. Not just an agreement, but people choosing to help each other, no matter the past." He looked at the faces in the crowd. "I know some of you still fear us. Maybe you always will. But we are not so different. We want to laugh, to work, to live without fear. We are tired of war. All I ask is that you judge us not by old stories or old anger, but by what we do now, today, together." There was a long silence. Some council members frowned, but others nodded thoughtfully. Princess Alira stood up, her voice clear and strong. "Marcus risked his life for this palace, for all of us. If we cannot trust someone willing to stand in harm's way, then we cannot trust anyone at all." She stepped down from the dais and took her place beside Marcus, showing the entire council where she stood. The council's debates lasted hours. Some argued that humans could not be trusted. Others repeated old fears. But each time, someone spoke of the night before, or of the kindness Marcus had shown to the children, or of the contests where he'd treated the princess as an equal. The tide was turning, slowly but surely. During a break, Alira and Marcus sat together under a tall, flowering tree. The sun dappled the grass with shifting light. Marcus looked tired, but a spark of hope lit his face. "Did I say the right things?" he asked quietly. Alira smiled. "You spoke from the heart. That's what matters." As they talked, a group of young palace guards approached. One of them, a Neran with silver hair and quick eyes, bowed. "Princess, Lieutenant, may we join you?" Alira nodded, surprised. The guards sat, asking Marcus about Earth, about the war, about why he had chosen to take off his armor and walk away that first day. Marcus answered honestly, telling them that sometimes showing your true self was the bravest thing you could do. One guard admitted, "I used to think humans were all the same, but you proved me wrong." Another said, "You helped my sister after the explosion. Thank you." The simple gathering turned into a small lesson, with Marcus telling stories and answering questions. Alira saw the change on the guards' faces. For the first time, they were truly listening. That night, after the long council session, the king invited Marcus and Alira to his private study. King Orion was a wise man, older than most, and his eyes missed nothing. "Lieutenant, you have done much to help our people," the king said. "You have shown patience, kindness, and courage. If there is to be peace, it will be because people like you and my daughter have shown us a better way." He turned to Alira. "And you, my child, have shown humility and wisdom beyond your years. I am proud of you." Alira felt pride swell inside her, but also a sense of responsibility. The peace they hoped for was still fragile. As they left the king's study, Marcus paused in the hallway. "Thank you, Alira," he said softly. Alira touched his shoulder, smiling. "No, Marcus, thank you. You taught me what strength really means." Suddenly, alarms rang out through the palace. Voices shouted in fear. The unknown enemy from beyond the Nyran borders, strange ships that had attacked before, was launching a full assault on the city. Soldiers ran through the corridors, and the sky outside filled with the flashing lights of battle. Alira grabbed Marcus's hand. "We need to rally the defenses, together." The palace shook as warning sirens echoed through its marble halls. Outside, the sky darkened with the shadows of enemy ships, their engines burning red above the city. Laser beams flickered in the sky, bright as lightning, while the people below rushed for shelter. Princess Alira's heart pounded as she ran beside Marcus toward the command center, weaving through crowds of frightened nobles and servants. Every step felt heavier than the last. The war they had tried so hard to end had returned to their doorstep, threatening to destroy the fragile hope they'd begun to build. Soldiers shouted orders, palace guards ran to their posts, and couriers raced through the halls with new reports every minute. When they reached the command center, King Orion was already there, his face grim but determined. Generals from both the Nyran and human armies studied holographic maps, showing red enemy dots closing in from every direction. Alira stood straight, refusing to show fear. She turned to Marcus, who met her gaze with calm strength. He was still, without armor, but no one questioned his right to be there now. "We have to hold the city until reinforcements arrive," the king said, his voice steady. "If the enemy breaks through, not only the palace but everyone in the capital is at risk." Marcus spoke up. "The best defense is unity. Humans and Nyrans have trained together, but never fought side by side in real battle. Now is the time to show we trust each other." Some of the old generals hesitated, unused to sharing command with a human, but Alira stood next to Marcus, lifting her chin. "Lieutenant Hale is right. If we fight as one, we are stronger than any enemy." Marcus quickly moved into action, working with the commanders to set up defenses around the palace gates and the city walls. He assigned mixed teams, human and Nyran soldiers together, to each post. At first, there was awkwardness, even doubt. Some Nyran warriors muttered about trusting their backs to humans, while a few humans whispered about Nyran pride. But the memory of Marcus's courage and Alira's respect for him silenced most complaints. Outside, explosions rocked the city as enemy troops landed and began their advance. Marcus ran from post to post, encouraging the defenders. He gave, advice where needed, offered support to the anxious, and made quick decisions that saved lives. Alira did the same, her royal presence calming the panicked and inspiring the brave. Together, they were a symbol of the new alliance, two people from once warring worlds standing side by side. As the enemy broke through the first city gate, chaos threatened to take hold. Blaster fire filled the streets and frightened civilians, hid wherever they could. Marcus organized evacuation routes, sending teams to lead families to the palace's underground shelters. He did not hesitate to carry a wounded child himself, or shield a Niran elder from falling debris. Alira joined, the rescue teams working in the crowded, smoky corridors. She tore her royal robes to use as bandages and used her knowledge of the palace tunnels to guide groups safely through the maze. Several times, she found herself separated from her guards, alone with people who had once doubted her. Yet they trusted her now, seeing not just a princess, but a leader who was willing to risk everything for them. During a lull in the fighting, Marcus met Alira in the palace courtyard. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and fear. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, glancing up at the sky where enemy ships still circled. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Alira forced a tired smile. "I'm still standing. That's enough for now." They did not have time to rest. Alira's communication device crackled with urgent news. Enemy troops had breached the outer garden, heading straight for the council chamber. If they captured it, they could take the council members hostage and force the palace to surrender. Without waiting for orders, Marcus and Alira gathered a team of mixed soldiers and rushed to intercept the attackers. The garden was a beautiful place, filled with rare flowers and ancient statues, now scarred by blaster burns. The enemy soldiers moved quickly, but Marcus's team moved faster, taking cover behind marble walls and fountains. The battle was fierce, but not hopeless. Marcus used his knowledge of strategy to outflank the enemy, while Alira led her people with courage and quick thinking. When the enemy tried to surround them, Marcus signaled the Niran guards to fall back, then led a small group of humans through a hidden path he'd learned from the children in the gardens. They caught the enemy off guard, turning the tide. In the thick of the fight, Alira saw a young Niran soldier cornered by two enemy troops. Without thinking, she rushed forward, disarming one attacker with a swift kick and pulling the Niran to safety. The soldiers stared at her in awe. "Thank you, Princess," Alira smiled, brushing dust from her hair. "Next time, stay close." At the same time, Marcus rescued a wounded human by shielding him with his own body and pulling him behind a statue. He pressed a bandage to the man's arm, whispering words of comfort before returning to the battle. His actions inspired those who saw him, giving them the courage to keep fighting. As the sun began to set, the enemy launched one final desperate attack. They broke through the main gates with a massive blast, flooding the palace courtyard with soldiers and drones. Marcus and Alira regrouped their remaining forces at the heart of the palace, knowing this could be the last stand. The defenders were tired, battered, and outnumbered. But now, for the first time, the humans and Nirans fought as one. Side by side, they stood firm, covering each other's backs and sharing resources. Alira led the charge, her voice ringing out above the noise, urging her people to be brave. Marcus fought with quiet strength, never leaving anyone behind. In the heat of battle, a stray blast brought part of the balcony crashing down toward Alira. Marcus saw it just in time and threw himself at her, pushing her out of the way as the stones shattered on the floor where she had been standing. Alira's heart raced as she realized how close she had come to being hurt. She looked at Marcus, grateful and shaken. "Are you all right?" he asked, breathless. "Yes." "Thank you," she replied, helping him to his feet. Their moment was short. There was no time for fear. As the enemy pushed forward, Alira and Marcus made a bold move, rallying the defenders for a counterattack. The humans and Nerans surged forward together, their united strength finally overpowering the attackers. Slowly, the enemy was pushed back, retreating toward the city gates. At last, as night settled over the palace, the enemy ships lifted off, fleeing back into the darkness. Cheers and cries of relief echoed through the ruined halls and battered courtyards. People hugged each other, wept, and thanked the heroes who had saved them. Alira stood on the steps of the palace, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, but her eyes shining with pride. Beside her, Marcus smiled, a tired, genuine smile. "We did it," Alira said softly. Marcus nodded. "Not alone. Together." The palace and the city had been saved, but the cost was clear in the faces of the wounded, the damage to the buildings, and the weight of exhaustion in every step. Yet something important had changed. The humans and Nerans had fought as allies, and the memory of this day would not be forgotten. As the stars returned to the night sky, Alira and Marcus looked at each other with new understanding. They had not just defended a city. They had defended hope itself, the hope that different people could become one, that peace could be more than a dream. When morning came, the palace and the city around it were quiet for the first time in days. Sunlight shone through the broken windows, casting soft gold across the ruined courtyards. Everywhere, people moved slowly, tending to the wounded, sweeping away debris, and comforting those who had lost their homes. The worst of the danger had passed, but the scars of the battle remained for all to see. Princess Alira walked through the palace halls, her steps careful. Every few feet, someone stopped her to thank her for her courage. She saw Neran elders and human refugees working together to clear a hallway, and young soldiers, of both species, carrying food and water to the injured. There was pain and sadness in their eyes, but also hope. It was a hope that things might finally change. In the palace garden, the once beautiful flower beds were trampled and scorched, but new green shoots were already poking up through the blackened soil. Alira paused, kneeling beside one stubborn flower that had survived the chaos. She reached out and gently touched the bright yellow petals. It seemed a sign somehow that life would go on. From behind her, she heard footsteps. Marcus approached, moving slowly but with a small smile. He, too, looked tired. His face was marked with dirt, and there was a rip in his sleeve where a blaster shot had grazed him. Yet there was relief and peace in his eyes. He knelt next to Alira and watched her as she studied the flower. "It survived," Marcus said quietly. "Even after everything?" Alira nodded. "Just like us. Just like this city." For a few minutes, they sat in silence. All around them, the palace gardens came alive with quiet voices. Children, their faces smudged but smiling, helped to plant new seeds. Old enemies worked side by side, repairing broken statues and sweeping away glass. The human and Neran flags hung together above the palace entrance, something that would have been impossible only weeks ago. At last, the council was ready to meet. The people crowded into the crystal hall, which had been cleaned and decorated as best as possible. King Orion stood at the center, looking tired but proud. He called for quiet, and everyone listened. "My people," the king began, his voice clear, "we have all suffered. We have lost friends, and we have lost homes. But we have also found something new, trust and courage in each other. It is because of Princess Alira and Lieutenant Marcus Hale that we have this chance for peace. They fought together, risked their lives together, and showed us the true meaning of strength." He called Alira and Marcus to stand beside him. Alira's heart beat fast as she walked forward. She saw Marcus at her side, no longer a stranger in armor, but a friend who had proven himself with every action. The council members, alien and human, old and young, stood and applauded. It was not just polite clapping, but genuine respect. Some eyes were wet with tears. King Orion continued, "From this day let the Nerean and human peoples be allies. Let us build together, learn together, and remember what we have suffered, so we may never return to war." Marcus was invited to speak. He looked at the crowd, searching for words that would fit the moment. "I came here with nothing but my armor and some hope. But I found something more powerful than any weapon. People willing to stand together, no matter where they were born. If we keep helping each other, if we remember what we fought for, then this will be a new beginning. Not just for us, but for everyone in the galaxy." His words echoed through the hall. The delegates and the crowd listened in silence, feeling the truth in every sentence. Many of those who had once doubted the possibility of peace were now ready to believe. After the council meeting, the celebrations began. It was not a loud or fancy party, but something softer and more meaningful. People shared food from both worlds, and musicians played gentle tunes. Children ran through the halls, their laughter lifting the hearts of everyone who heard. Alira and Marcus walked together, stopping often as people came to thank them or tell their own stories. Later, Alira's father found them standing on a balcony overlooking the city. The king placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You have changed our world, Alira. I am proud of you, not just as a princess, but as a person." Alira smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, father, but I could not have done any of it alone." The king turned to Marcus, his expression warm. "Lieutenant, you have the respect of the Nerean Empire. You are welcome here always." Marcus bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I hope one day our worlds will be so close that no one remembers they were ever enemies." As the sun set, a gentle breeze carried the sound of the celebration through the palace. Alira and Marcus walked through the gardens, remembering everything they had been through. They talked quietly about the future, the challenges ahead, and the hard work that would still be needed to keep the peace. But both felt certain that the worst was over. The trust between them, and between their peoples, was now stronger than any wall. As the stars came out, Alira looked up, her voice soft. "Do you think they'll tell our story, Marcus? In the schools, in the years to come?" Marcus smiled, watching the sky. "Maybe they will. But I hope they tell it the right way, not as a story of victory, but as a story of learning to trust, of finding friends in the most unlikely places." Alira nodded. "That's the story I want remembered." 2. Before the night ended, a small ceremony was held in the garden, where the first survivors and the youngest children had planted new seeds. Alira placed a flower in the ground beside the others, and Marcus added a small stone carved with the names of those who had been lost in the battle. People gathered in a circle, human and Nerean, holding hands and promising to protect what they had built. No one knew what the future would bring, but the palace, once a place of fear and rivalry, was now full of hope. Walls that had separated people for generations had been broken, not by weapons, but by courage and understanding. The days and weeks that followed were busy, but filled with optimism. Human engineers helped rebuild the city's power grid. Nerean. Healers visited the human refugee camps, treating wounds and teaching new techniques. Schools opened their doors to all children, and the marketplaces filled with voices speaking every language. Marcus stayed on Nerean for a time, working with Alira to help smooth the new alliance. He was often seen in the gardens, talking with the children or sharing stories with old soldiers. People began to say that the human without armor was the bravest person in the Empire. Eventually, Marcus returned to Earth, but his friendship with Alira remained strong. Letters and messages traveled between the worlds, carrying news of progress and stories of everyday heroism. And in every corner of both worlds, The tale was told of the 19-year-old alien princess who mocked a human soldier, and the soldier who, by taking off his armor and walking away, taught everyone the meaning of true courage. They were remembered not just as leaders but as friends who refused to give up on hope, even when the galaxy seemed ready to tear itself apart. For generations, children grew up hearing about Alira and Marcus, about their bravery, their mistakes, and their kindness. The story became a symbol, not of war or pride, but of what could happen when two people chose to believe in something better.